Hey guys, welcome back. So today's video is going to be the review for the Natasha Denona Yucca Palette. There are a total of 15 shades in here, and there are 4 formulas. 4 of the shades are sparkly metallics. 1 is a standard shimmer. There are 8 powder mattes, and there are 2 creamy powders. Now I just want to break down what I mean by all of those things. So the sparkly metallics have a mixture of large particles and fine shimmer, and they are very reflective. They're a little bit more shiny than the standard shimmer, which is Ray. They all have a lot of shine, but these sparkly metallics are like really blinding metallic, especially when you put them on like really heavily. And the standard shimmer is kind of like what you see in a lot of palettes. It's all fine shimmer particles. It feels very smooth. It has a kind of a smooth look to it. And there's nothing really chunky. There's less fallout from this shade. The powder mattes are kind of self-explanatory. There's nothing creamy about them. They're just powder mattes. And then the 2 creamy powders are... They have a creamy quality to them, so they're not like full-on cream shades. They're not like a concealer. They're definitely still like powder-based, but they have more of an emollient kind of quality to them. Now, between the 2 shades in here, the top one is a little bit of a drier texture and less pigmented. It's a lot like many of the previous creamy powders I've seen in older palettes from them. But the one that's on the bottom is a little different, and I don't think that I have any other palettes with a formula like this. This one is a little bit waxier than the one that's above, and it's more pigmented. It also has a smell. It smells kind of like lipstick. It's not a bad smell, but it's noticeable. So one of the things I love about this is that it is kind of like a neutral palette, but it's not your basic neutral palette that's got shades that are like in every neutral palette that exists. It's a little bit more green leaning. There's some orange and yellow tones in there. So it kind of fills a gap in the realm of neutrals that it is not very common. And there's also a few pops of color in there. There's that lime green, there's that teal, and then a few like orange shades, and even that bluish silver. Another thing is the shine that I get from the shimmers. The shimmers are very satisfying. They have great color payoff, even just using a dry brush. If you use your finger or a wet brush, you can get a really blinding sheen out of them. So those are really nice quality. Another thing is the ease of use with the way the mattes are formulated, except for 2 of them, which I'll get to in the cons. But in general, most of the mid-tone and lighter mattes are very easy to apply and blend. I find them faster to use than some of the mattes in older palettes. And then the last pro is a major one for me. It has excellent wear time. Besides the 2 creams. The 2 creams are not as long wearing on me, but everything else I can get like 7 to 8 hours without primer, and then if I do wear a primer, I can get like 10 to 12 hours of wear. And of course, with every product, there are some drawbacks. So some of the things you might want to consider before purchasing this is that the sparkling metallics do have fallout, especially some of those large particles. You're going to get some of that falling down under your eyes. It is possible to kind of mitigate that a little bit by tapping the excess off your brush, maybe dampening your brush, using a little extra powder under the eyes to kind of help it not stick. But that's something that is in virtually every sparkly eyeshadow I've ever tried, so it's not a problem that's unique to these. It's something to be aware of. And then another one is the 2 deepest mattes, Flax and Willow. Because the mattes are not as intensely pigmented as previous palettes, I find these ones I need to spend extra time layering and kind of packing color on just to get it to look as even as possible. If I'm just wearing these eyeshadows for like to get ready for the day. It's not that obvious in person, but if you are somebody like a makeup artist, a content creator, if you photograph the makeup that you do, you're going to see that kind of imperfection with these two shades. So that's something to know. They aren't duds, but they have a little bit of a drawback there. And then another one is the two creamy powders. So I already said these have a shorter wear time on me. So that's something that is true for all of the creamy powders I've tried from her palettes. The one that's on the top is also much sheerer than the powder mattes are, so it takes a lot longer to kind of build that color up. That one, by the way, is like an olive green once you put it on the lid. It doesn't look gray like it looks here in the picture. And then the bottom one is, it's more of a like waxy texture, so that one has a little bit more color payoff than the one that's above. And then the last drawback to consider are the two shades that are probably most commonly going to be used as transition shades, so that's Tipu and Acacia. They look somewhat different here in the picture, but they are very similar. If you use them on the eye, they're really hard to tell apart. Acacia's a little bit deeper, a little bit greener toned, and Tipu's a little bit more yellow toned. So if you're not a fan of having dupes within one palette, that may be something to consider. Okay, and with all of that said, everything I've laid out, my opinion is I really like this palette, and even though there's some things that are not perfect about it, I still am happy to have it, and overall I think it's a great palette to have. Alright, so that's the end of my review, and just to wrap it up, I'm going to throw in a screenshot here next to show this palette next to a bunch of other palettes I have. That way you can kind of see where the color story lies compared to others. I do want to thank you so much for listening to me ramble on and on here, and I hope that it was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.